is not quite as,
Yeah, there it goes. Yeah, I'll get that test in a minute. Oh, these all a little wet.
Audio thing,
Okay.
bumping up.
Should have become low. Otherwise, I'll
Little
be
late.
I couldn't hear the guys on that, but. Oh, okay.
This is not gonna be probably with the holiday.
Want to give it a test bomb?
Yeah, yes, I saw the audio. So,
Trustee meeting, test. Test. Test.
there's an audio on that thing. Oh, it's on something. Yep, test one.
Testing,
test one.
testing. Okay,
Audio second.
all right.
Thank you.
Everybody all set? Okay, the meeting of the trustee of the trust funds in the town of Lincoln, New Hampshire, now comes to order. Thank my colleagues for being here. Thank Frank and Don for coming up on this beautiful day. We'll hope that they come up in October for the quarterly meeting. It'll be just as nice a day and be more foliage, things to see. We'll hope for. We're gonna let Frank and Donna present their draft, and we're gonna go over that, and then when they're done, they can go and we'll finish up other work. So I'm sitting here with some doors to things, stuff that they sure they hear funny old house. Sounds good. Okay, at this point, we're gonna turn everything over to Frank and Donna.
Yeah, thanks, Herb. As we were saying, it's a bonus trip up here for us to have what Dylan and I kind of refer to as a working session.
Yeah.
Over and above our regularly scheduled quarterly updates. I think it was somewhat unanimous at our last meeting that we should get together and all kind of go over your investment policy statement, give you some of our suggestions, and give you our thoughts as to how best to position the investment policy statement so we, Bank of New Hampshire / Donna, can manage the trust funds and capital reserves in a prudent fashion, given your mandate to us. So that's kind of what we're doing today. I know Donna sent along a draft. We also had kind of a draft of where you were heading, and we're just having a discussion today. That's really where we're at, and we want to help you out. And as you know, we work with other municipalities, so we're able to bring some of their thoughts to the policy as well. So that's it from my side of the table. We'll let Dawn maybe introduce some of her thoughts as to where we can take the investment policy statement.
yeah, thank you for having us up. Basically this, so part of the reason for this new policy is because the introduction of equities into the capital reserve portion of the town asset. And that is something which is allowed by the state for RSA, but not all towns actually do it. So I have a couple of accounts that do allow for capital reserve equity investment. And in general, at the bank, we have several other accounts that I also don't manage that do allow for equity participation. And I think that when this was first discussed back in, I think it was like September, October, November, when it was being discussed what to invest in it. I think that the ranges of having 15% sort of a target for equity was really great. So, and I think having percentages, I do have some modifications from the draft actually that I've given you after some other sort of thought. But I think that this is a pretty good working draft, but I really also want your feedback on it. And this is not something that has to be finalized today. In fact, I did find a few little redundancies in my language that I can kind of take care of and clean up. But I think that it's you started with a great start for what you had introduced at our last meeting. And I think that just adding, again, some of the more particulars to it was sort of necessary. And the reason for this is because really the purpose of this document is to guide an investment manager into what they're sort of allowed and not allowed to do. And it provides the groundwork also for any new trustee member that comes on board. It's a working document that they can understand sort of, how the monies are going to be managed.
Yeah,
Like,
great.
like I just break in for a minute.
Yeah, sure.
This is chair, I'd just like to say that over the last few years, I wanted to change this document several times, and the boards at that time were happy with what it was. So I couldn't even get a motion second to even do anything, so I want to make that clear. That I wanted to change some of this in the past, not radical change, but add maybe a paragraph or so. And everybody was happy with it, so that's why it doesn't change from the time that it's in our quarterly reports that you give us.
Yeah,
And
and
that
that's
made that clear, that I had.
Yeah, well, the previous
Good point.
document was,
Yeah, fine.
was in working order. There was
Yeah.
nothing, it was quite slim.
Yeah,
But it was per RSA, and again, so since Amy Nichols had sort of come on board and working for the charitable trust, I included a document which is sort of facts and considerations for municipalities to use. And there's so much more information out there, and they've done working I think working sort of sessions, and I've seen the slides for those as well. I haven't never participated, but I've seen the slides and then the verbiage that goes along with the slides, sort of a transcript, so to speak. And because a lot of, we're dealing with legalese, we're dealing with these RSAs and statutes and everything, and they're kind of like, what we're dealing, it's a lot of them, and we're plucking this one, we need to make sure we're using this and this and this, and so I think, and there are sometimes, amendments to those. Interestingly enough, I was kind of interested in, I don't know who, with the document, I did find the document, thank you very much too, that Frank, you had provided Frank, that he had turned over to me. We'd moved offices, and so it got kind of, I had it in a working folder, and I don't know, it got put into another folder. But anyway, interestingly enough, there was some information in there about alternatives, and most particularly gold. So I did want to bring that up not for capital reserves, but for the trust fund money. Gold has been a real boon. Gold traditionally, obviously, it was the sort of monetary standard, and then since that was sort of taken away, it's considered an alternative. Well, any precious metal is, whether it's platinum, silver, gold, but gold tends to be a hedge against inflation as a precious metal, and particularly during these inflationary times, gold in the form of, there's two different ways sort of getting introduced to gold. One is through a mutual fund where you actually own the mine, and what the other is an ETF. And this document here specifically references ETFs, and in particular is one called GLD, where you are actually own a portion of the bullion. And that's what you want to own. You don't want to own it's the mining, and extraction portion of it is not what, yes.
I'm sorry, which document are you reading?
So there was a document on the back of this that was Legiscan.
Was this,
about what,
This was something that was scanned when you provided Frank with this,
this you're talking about?
yeah.
yeah,
Gary, that's your,
great.
yeah, Gary did that. So,
And it was
I didn't do it, but, yeah, anybody.
So we can
So-
table that for,
Well, no, hold on.
I don't remember.
Just so we.
I probably got it. I didn't print this out or pay attention to it.
I didn't.
So what this is, this is a law
This is
that
what it
was adopted by the legislature and signed by the governor. It went into effect, I believe, the day before we had our last meeting. And it was a resolution. A bill adopted by the legislature and signed by the governor, which allowed the state treasury to invest in precious metals and digital assets. So, we had some discussion about whether or not we wanted to, clarify what we were dealing with. And one of the trustees has just asked that it be attached to our policy. So this was attached, but we didn't adopt this as part of our policy. It was just attached to the
Right, yeah, this and also the one on the ESG as well.
That's not, we didn't agree to put that,
No, and I understand that, but it was interesting that it was attached.
right,
So when I looked at it, I
Yeah.
didn't know if it was something
no, we
that
didn't
you
approve that.
discussed or whether you wanted to discuss it or, okay.
Frank, I think you'll remember that we had a board member that was adamant for years ago. He was getting by silver with gold and we had.
I remember this.
We can't do that.
And I'm open to discussion because I think it's an interesting topic.
I don't know if
That's-
municipal money is included in the state treasurer
Right.
fund. I think that was the first thing that came to my mind.
Yeah,
So, that would have to be, again, that would have to be something that would be included in an RSA. And I have not seen anything to that effect. I can look into it, but I don't believe that there was something allowed. Municipal money is different than the state.
right, yeah.
So,
Was that referring to pension? Or,
no, it just said, I mean, when I read it, it just,
funds under the control of the state treasury.
Yeah, that may not necessarily,
the treasurer may invest a portion of public funds in
right,
the same
state,
like versus municipal trustee trust, but we can check on that for you.
Yeah, but
I see what you're saying.
I just was bringing it up
Yeah,
as an
no, I
interesting
think
point,
it's
and
been very interesting.
because in most of
What you're saying.
our accounts, actually, well, for personal accounts and institutional accounts, gold and even some other alternatives, we do use them as with specific purposes during specific periods in business cycle or, some sort of economic cycle, or whether it's inflation or whatever the situation.
And just for clarification, for alternatives, are you specifically talking about all alternatives or just gold? Because there's other alternatives. When they say alternatives, that's a category of
Correct.
different things. So I just want to make sure when we're talking about,
Yeah.
maybe we need a definition for what we're talking about.
So alternatives are all alternatives, which would include precious metals as one subsector of alternatives. Similar to equity, you have large cap stocks, mid cap stocks, international stocks, it's sort of subsectors. So there are a variety of different types of alternative methods. We, as a firm, do not invest in what I term tricky ones. If you don't understand what something does and the way an investment works and what the ramifications will be under different situations, you shouldn't be investing in it. And a lot of the things that Wall Street, my personal opinion, likes to set up are things that a lot of people don't understand. And they
Right.
don't really understand how things will, the domino effect of when
Right.
one thing happens.
Like
things like that.
derivatives.
Yeah, so I think, the particular ones that we use for our fund, for our accounts are more basic types of alternative things. I don't think these alternatives are anything that I would ever recommend for municipal money. I'm not sure that they're even allowed.
I agree. I just, when you said alternatives, because I know sometimes they refer to like mortgages or something, buying mortgages.
No, that would be mortgage-backed securities are actually a form of fixed income. And, and you can buy like a Ginnie Mae fund, or you could buy a mortgage-backed fund or something like that, that are pretty traditional pooled type things.
Yeah.
There are some mortgage products that, that's how with the financial crisis, what happened when they start stripping things down. And unfortunately also, that there's a lot to that, but straight mortgages,
Yeah.
it's actually.
Well, I wasn't thinking straight. I mean, when someone else introduced to me another financial person, they mentioned loans, okay, and being that part of your personal portfolio.
Right.
And be.
So private loans are set, those are all more, yes. so
Yeah,
that's
sure.
a different-
Certainly our discussion with private individuals and other types of endowments are, it's kind of a little different than what we typically have with you here as the fiduciaries of trustee of trust funds. So
Very different, yeah.
the different types of conversations regarding alternatives, what you can do or not do. Why don't we look to the draft that, yeah,
Go ahead, go ahead.
I did one thing, not providing an opinion on the precious metals, but I did want to point out one thing that the trigger is aware of. The policy since 2019, which the trustees have had, has a sentence which is carried forward to our new draft of the policy, we're working on. And it says that in accordance with the vote of the trustees, no high-risk investments will be made in such as but not limited to commodities, currencies, or precious metals.
Yes,
So since 2019, that's been part of the policy, and it was included in the most recent draft that we submitted.
Okay.
I think that's appropriate.
Okay, and I did say, one of my things on my notes was I need to add the alternative precious metal language. So that's my, yep. And I will do that.
Okay, just for the record, this is clear, this attachment, we never agreed to this.
Right.
It's not policy of this board.
Understood.
Make that clear.
Yeah, we're
Attachment.
So what we want to do is come away with, to Donna's point, this is a fluid document. It's nothing set in stone today. You can adopt the investment policy next week and change it the month after, or whatever. What we want to do is just get a policy in place that protect you as fiduciaries of the town trustee of trust funds assets, and it allows Donna to work to manage the assets appropriately within the policy. So I think I think what Donna provided is pretty good framework. She kind of took what you had provided at the last meeting and kind of tried to combine the two. Have you had a chance to look at both of them? Any thoughts? I think the main difference is you'll see Donna has added specific asset allocation percentages that we'd like to stay within in the portfolio, as opposed to the draft that you had. So we can start there and tell us what you think.
The other thing, yes, on page 2 of my draft, I understand the, you had put in your language a minimum of $1 million. So maybe, and I'm referencing page 2 at the top to this.
Right.
So maybe on the, to the right of the 15% for the range of 0 to 30%, we could put minimum $1 million. If that is something that, because working within a budget, for instance, I see the current item that we just got notification for the 500,000, you know, we want to make sure that there's ample money for something like that. So if you prefer, we can put a minimum of 1 million over to the side to make sure that that is, you know, that's taken care of, because
I think that's important. All.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I told Terry yesterday about the fire engine coming up, and they
Yeah.
said it's gonna be $500,000, so. Right, so, that plus typically our annual amount for the town was, you know, usually less than 300,000, so that huge expense of $500,000 plus the 300 is well within the range of 1 million. But I'll couch that with, we're also getting, you know, nearly 5% off of those monies, so it's an investment that works for us, you know.
Right.
I don't know what the future is going to hold with, you know, different rates and different investments, but I think that $1 million works presently. You know, I think that's a good amount.
right.
Well, it does. I would just, my thought is, you know, if we're in a scenario where we take the $500,000 out, say of a balance of $1 million, now we're gonna have to sell an asset to bring the cash back to $1 million. You know, I mean, that.
Yeah, I mean,
So I think the percentages, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, work better for us and our quarterly meetings. How do we always start it off? you're aware of any cash needs or whatever. So we'll always have a dialogue.
Right.
But I'm just
Sure.
concerned that putting a numerical dollar amount on it
Right,
would lead us to perhaps have to sell an investment to bring that back up to 1 million,
right,
where it's not a good time to do so.
Well, so I did actually, because the email was forwarded to Frank and I from Terry, so I went through and looked at future, what's coming up, and there's actually in October, 150,000 coming in January, 250. So that's 400,000 within the next couple months. That will pretty much take, as long as, so if there's 500 after the fire truck that's remaining, in the cash position, then, in just less than, I think it's October 15th, 150 will be replenished. And then, so as long as that's, 650 is enough for your other budgetary needs, you've got 250 in January, so we can naturally let things flow off.
right, I mean, you gotta use common
Because in
sense.
February, there's another 200,000 that flows off.
Right,
see.
and I agree, hard and fast, especially when something like the fire truck is a massive amount, I mean, you're not gonna have $500,000 rolling in.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right.
That's odd. So,
And I agree with you completely.
okay, so all I'm saying is by putting $1 million there, we could come to a meeting with you, be out of compliance, because we have 600.
Right.
But in compliance, if it's 0 to 15%, 0 to
Right.
30%, that's all.
Yeah, and, right, and,
Yeah.
and, that's fine.
Okay.
And, I would, we'll talk more about it, but I mean, I think in the state, trustee trust fund for policy investment statement, when they give percentages, they gave like cash and capital equivalents 10%, fixed income 70%, equities 20%. This was like from the Department of Justice for Amy Nichols, Gary actually brought this out, but they said guideline. You know what I mean? So they gave you flexibility in that, and I don't think any of us are lacking any common sense.
Right.
For these things.
That's why we had that range,
Right,
and the range is 0 to 30, so we'd still be within compliance, but it wouldn't be exactly at that 15%. But I wanted to have you all feel comfortable that sort of 15% at the current levels was about $1 million, and that's what you're sort of, comfortable with.
Jerry, what do you think about the $1 million?
Well, I think, if we wanted to keep the $1 million target, might just want to not make it a mandatory provision, just, indicate it as like a goal of providing some.
Or guideline
or something.
Guideline 1 million, I
Yeah,
get it.
that's a situation like Frank was saying, technically out of compliance. If it's, because the way it is worded now is, to be held, 1 million cash flows, it sounds like it's mandatory that it has to be that exact amount.
Right, that's my concern.
Loosens up a little bit. And,
Yeah.
and included percentage as well, if trustees are thinking of going on.
Yeah, so that's
To
the
do
point of the
something.
range. Yeah,
It seemed to me that one of the big differences between the two policies was that, yours differentiated the capital reserve funds from the trust funds.
Right, I noticed that too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and of course, the trust funds are very small amount compared to the capital reserve funds, which is
Yeah.
And I think it was probably already somewhere else in the policy that it's pretty well known that the investment philosophy is different from the funds. The horizon differs, the types of investments differ. So, and I think our current policy, I think I'm gonna probably just presume, or I should say the proposed policy we were working with, probably just presume that we were talking about the capital reserve funds for the $1 million cash equivalents.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I can say that.
as well as I think the horizon, the investment time horizon, but it says that the trust fund to be no more than 3 years, because in all honesty, you shouldn't really, generally speaking, when you have equity, because there's such a large amount, that's part of it, you still have like only 15% in equity. That's the higher risk asset and the potential for loss and longer term loss, but the majority of the assets being very liquid and in low risk, high, because they're high quality, short duration bonds. You know, that you have laddered so that you constantly have a cash flow. That is, you know, overpowering the majority of the money. So it's okay to have the equity portion, but you know, generally speaking, equities are meant for things that have longer time horizons, but it's only 15%. So that, and it is allowed by the RSA. I think it's very important to have a distinction between the two types of money, because particularly as, you know, they also like you to mention expendable and non-expendable, and making sure that, you know, that things are not really pooled together. They can be pulled together for purposes of investment, but they're, you know, considered very separate items when you have donor monies and things like that. So and taking care to, even though we're now pooling all cash, principal and income, you know, that is all kept, is monitored in the sub accounting that we do for you. So it's all accounted for. We're just pooling them for investment purposes. And it's very important. I've never seen a policy that doesn't make a distinction, which is the reason why I did it.
So, following up on it a little bit, if you go back to our policy we were working on, the process of the document, the first case that we had, you don't see any issues with that. For you, I mean, like, you have a general overview that's kind of some general language that's sort of similar to RRD, but you didn't have any concern with the whole first page of our policy.
No, and I actually pulled quite a bit of your language and placed it into other areas. Yeah,
And I
correct.
think the same goes for the first two paragraphs on the second page, although maybe the reference to the executive order might not be something we usually see, but if you look at the substance of what it says, it just says that the trustee shall prioritize investments to maximize financial risk. So we avoided sort of the controversial part of that executive order. It just including that part.
Yep.
Okay.
And the second paragraph, I think, is similar to what is in all policies. So really, the crux of the matter, the matter is really kind of the most important part. It's in the current investment guidance section for our policy. You were sort of making recommendations for improvements such as differentiating capital reserve funds and trust funds and a couple of things like that from the bottom of your.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a great working document for me to start. Absolutely. You, the trustee here in the town of Lincoln, you've done a fabulous job in providing a beautiful skeleton from which, you know, all I did was differentiate between the two types of funds. So I want to make that clear. There is nothing intrinsically incorrect. All I did was make some clarification. And so that should be noted. I would like for the people to know that, yes. The other thing is in the third paragraph of page 1 of what I've provided, it does speak to retaining the services, and I think that might be retain the services of an outside advisor. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, the fourth paragraph. This has to do with whether the funds are invested according to the prudent investor rule, or there's another rule which is this prudent investor rule allows for the whole portfolio to be reviewed in its completion. Whereas in the other prudent rule, you have to look at each absolute asset as its own individual entity and whether that is prudent. So sometimes, for instance, you might have assets that because of correlations that aren't similar, you might want to add an asset because the way it offsets another asset, so the way that they work in combination together. So we do find that the prudent investor rule is generally you need to state that that is the way that the money will be managed. And it also has to be the director of charitable trust has to be notified of that in writing. Similar to they need to get a copy of the the investment policy, but it is something that does need to be put into writing.
I'm glad you put that up. So what you're referring to is, to clarify for your one correctly, it's actually the fourth paragraph of your.
Yes.
Yeah, for-
your document, because our draft policy did, of course, authorize retaining services.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I started with that at
Yeah,
first and
so
I corrected
it's the fourth.
myself. Yes,
And I just want to note for fellow trustees that the prudent investor rule is also referenced in the state curriculum office draft policy. They recommend that the portfolio is in accordance with what they call the prudent and the prudent person rule. And they refer to RSA 31.5B. You have but so it's, I'm not sure what section it's under the RSAs, but the state does refer to that, and that probably just would require, if we decide to make that change, just adding a sentence such as
it's important because there is a difference in the way that the monies have to be managed. And if I were put under the constraint of the prudent man as opposed to the investor, again, every asset is taken, the portfolio is not looked at as a whole, it's every asset as a distinct.
So you're saying prudent man is different than.
Well, the prudent man, let me look and see here with the, it is.
He gave us,
It's right there. Man, it's right there.
well, I think what you're saying in general, if I understand correctly, is you're suggesting the prudent investor looks at the portfolio its entirety, the equities, fixed income and cash equivalents, whereas the prudent man or prudent person rule looks at each individual investment on its own.
Each bond.
So it says, under the prudent man standard, which is the default, I'm on looking at that additional item that I gave to you, which is the summary of laws and facts. Under trust fund investments, it says prudent man, under the prudent man standard, which is the default standard, the preservation of principal and the amount and regularity of the income would be considered in determining whether each investment is prudent. Prudent investor standard, under the prudent investor rule, the investment portfolio is judged in its entirety, considers diversification and the purposes and terms of the trust.
So just a sentence in Donna's draft references, where the trustees have made the decision and adopted to invest the funds per the prudent investor rule. That's all. If that's in there, we're good.
Because otherwise it would be the prudent man, which is the default.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just checking a couple things in the RSAs.
So maybe it would help.
I'm not really sure that. I'm questioning whether there's really a difference between prudent investor rule and. Wondering if it might have just been a change to eliminating the gender in the term of man, I'm not convinced yet that there's actually a difference between the two, so. I do see that the state policy references RSA 3125B. Here's
So is the prudent man, excuse me, I'm sorry, and the prudent investor is 3125D.
well, 3125B. Doesn't refer to. Well, it defines prudent investment. It says, for purposes of RSA 3125A, a prudent investment is one which a prudent man would purchase for his own investment, having primarily in view the preservation of principal and the amount of regularity of the income to be derived therefrom. And 3025D. All this, but I guess
No, it's important.
add to 3025D says application of prudent investor rule. The trustees of trust funds may manage and invest such funds in accordance with the prudent investor rule under, and then they refer to some other statutes, without regard to investment limitations of RSA 3125 and 3125A. Provided, however, the trustees of trust funds notify the Attorney General in writing of the decision to invest in the prudent investor rule and hire or employ the trust department of a bank or brokerage firm to provide investment advice and assistance under 3138A.
So one of the policies of a pretty significant municipality in the state handles this, I believe, by saying all investments can only be made in accordance with New Hampshire RSAs in place at the time of adoption of the investment policy statement and follow the prudent investor rule as defined by New Hampshire state law. That's in their policy. And then filing that policy every year with the Division of Charitable Trust is in fact notifying them that you've adopted that.
Okay, well, my way of thinking, without making a decision right now, we were talking about this further, is
Yeah.
regardless of whether or not there is a distinction between the prudent annual and the prudent investor rule,
Not much.
or it sounds like the recommendation is that we resort to the prudent investor rule in the policy for a whole set of reasons. It would just require administrative sentence. It sounds like we've done is recommending it. The state had, although they call it the prudent man.
Yeah.
I think they're talking about prudent investments, whether it's by any other kind of investor.
Here's what we've run into before, and I want Donna to listen because I haven't talked this over with her. This is a difference you might see. If you were to buy a triple B bond in a prudent man scenario, the prudent man would say, no, you can't. That's not appropriate for cap reserves. It's the rating is too low. If you were looking at it in a prudent investor and you own 30 bonds and you're just looking to get a little diversification and you wanted to add a triple B in to juice the yield a little bit, under the prudent investor rule, that would be allowed. So if you're just looking at the bond, no, too risky. If you're looking at the bond as part of an overall portfolio where the diversification needs are met, I think in that scenario would be allowed.
Similar to equity,
Similar to- yeah.
putting equity into a capital reserve fund by itself could be considered too risky. But because we're using an index fund, which is I specifically mentioned that in the equity portion for cap reserves, was saying we're using a large cap index fund, which provides great diversification and ease of sale. You can make the argument that it's actually adding to the whole overall the portfolio. However, a prudent man might say, no, equities are not appropriate for capital reserve funds. So you're looking at the total portfolio for for all of the items together, providing a diversification and the appropriate means to provide for the goal of liquidity as well as boosting, some yield, maximizing, return while minimizing risk. As you had outlined too.
Yeah, so I think, as you sit there with your fiduciary hats on, I think the best way forward is to either commingle what Donna had provided with our thoughts with, and I think most of your working document is in here.
In there.
And, if you want to tweak any of the percentages or whatever, that's fine. What we're trying to do from our side is make sure that Donna is able to effectively manage the portfolio given changing economic environments, right? If COVID happens, we have percentages in place we can agree. That's why the ranges are so large. So that's how I would suggest maybe moving
Right,
forward.
well, and I see what you're saying, I mean, this prudent demand and.
Yeah.
Prudent investment, I mean, I understand the argument. I think it's kind of balanced with our asset.
Pretty much.
You're like you were saying, so it's just like, we have percentages for cash and fixed income and equity, so it's kind of like. That's our guideline and it kind of negates this other discussion to some extent.
It kind of does, both the statutes and the fact that, the capital reserve bonds have to be a minimum rating of A or higher, that almost by itself satisfies.
Yeah,
any
I just
demand.
wonder
So I
if
think-
we're splitting hairs.
Yeah, I think so. I think the prudent investor rule allows us to prudently manage the portfolio with high quality investments.
I know, but now. Gary's got his attorney hat on, so I mean, I totally understand where he's coming from. I do, and I'm not saying one way or the other. I think we should discuss it more. I'm just saying the asset allocation does kind of take care of a lot of the things,
Yeah.
and we're all common sense people, and you're going to
Yeah.
invest in any
It actually looks,
C-rated bonds or.
it actually looks like the RSA's are contradictory, as I was looking at it further.
That's
Well, that's why I said.
Good word.
we're-
I thought the same thing.
Exactly, and it's very, very difficult to write these,
Yeah.
because when you
Yeah.
actually even go through the summary of facts. This, like, just multiple page document, it is even confusing with some of what they're telling you that
Yeah.
you're supposed to pull in. And, in the language, they say you can make a document as small as you want, you can make it as large as you want. I was just trying to provide something that really pinpoints some of the major points that I've come across in my work with municipalities. And the working documents that we use that we're really going for this, and because they make such a distinction in the RSA and they bring it up quite frequently in all of these municipal sessions and everything for how to write a policy, that it gets included. So I feel whether it seems necessary to me personally, or something that, I'm trying to cover, dot our i's and cross our t's and not.
One more thing, we're very probably doing this tomorrow, but as we're talking, there are a few more things. The state policy, which actually recommended using the prudent and policy 25B, it looks to me like it was actually drafted in 1996. And as I was also researching the internet as we're talking, I found sources which indicate that the prudent investor rule is more modern than
Absolutely.
and there is a distinction between the two. And as you pointed out, and it sounds like some of the state materials are updated. The RSAs are also contradictory. The more recent version of the RSA that's pertinent is the one you said, 25B, which uses the prudent investment rule. RSA 25B is still part of the law, but I think it's RSA 25D that I need to refer to because it's just the sense or something about to give you that authority, and as you indicated, it's required to be able to notify another. Sounds like it is.
Okay, so we'll accept any language you want to incorporate into what we provide.
Yeah, please.
We'll run it by us. And,
Well, something that I
I mentioned this too. Both trustees, yes. And it might seem like a minor thing, but it's not minor based on history of this board. The past,
Right.
so it's on the last page, it's on our policy and yours too. Then it says the trustees shall at a minimum meet quarterly and more frequently necessary. I would like to change that to the trustees shall meet quarterly. And meetings if warranted,
Okay,
because we're in a situation here, right, this goes before you, but
Yeah.
Tony was manager at Lincoln. That, you know, the meeting once a year, possibly twice. And I don't want that to ever happen if something, we're not here or something, they say, well, no, it's policy says we can, to lead. I don't like the way that leads to any kind of meetings like that, and that goes for other boards I've been on in other states. That needs to be said. It will be done, it's not, at least, or well, let's do that, because I've been on, when it's like, well, the minimum says 3, so let's do 2, and we're sticking it. I don't wanna get on that road again.
No, that. Led to some issues, so
Yeah,
I mean.
might
say
say
you
Kenny,
quarterly,
but-
yeah.
where is this? I'm sorry, I wanna make sure.
The last page and
Oh, okay, here we go, okay,
yeah, I just, I'm thinking.
Yep, I'll go ahead, yeah.
Backwards and I'm thinking forwards on it, yeah, because I know what went on before.
okay,
Well, as I said, when you see language like that, if you want to tweak it or whatever, please, or
Yeah.
if it's not in there, let us know.
I think that's important.
In the draft Donna provided, it says at least quarterly.
Yeah.
The advisor shall.
I just want to get rid of the,
So instead of at least say quarterly.
oh, so.
Yeah.
right,
Okay.
and more meetings,
Oh, okay,
warranted.
yeah.
Now, this board and the 2 boards before this, been having work sessions, which have been very productive. When you're on, and this is unusual for you to be on a work session, but
Yeah.
you've always offered in fairness to call in.
Yeah.
And that's great too. And we take a minute to thank Bank of New Hampshire for allowing us to use their offices during COVID.
Yeah.
When this building was locked.
Yeah.
But
I remember that. Yeah.
and we met, in the very nice offices in the Lincoln office.
Yeah.
And we treated very, more than fair, I'd say, like visiting royalty, we would, get coffee and everything else, and being very cooperative. And we appreciate the fact, and I know Frank and Donna both said that if we ever had a problem here, we could use your office down there, which is great.
Sure.
There's so many people use this room, that's why we had to do Thursdays, because we were told.
Yeah.
Thursday morning's a pretty good time.
I can tell it's a busy place.
Yeah, this was planned, it was 4 hours last night.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
So I thought they could leave their stuff, it's not gonna bother
Right.
us. So I just wanted to put that in, and thank you for
Yeah.
that, but I just think it's important for the future that's being, and I wanna get Paul's thought. And Gary's thought on it, you seem to think it's okay.
Yeah, that's fine, and I would just make any additions, deletions, edits or combine what you had provided with what Donna provided, and I think we're pretty close to a good policy. It protects you, it allows Donna to do what she needs to do, given your mandate to us.
Sorry, Paul, what do you think about that change?
I'm sorry, which change are we talking about?
Change, what I just read.
Oh, about the leads, yeah, I mean, basically,
Not a new, you know,
Well,
right, quarterly,
There's no ladies.
quarterly is fine, I mean, I just point out, the charitable trust says at least 4 times a year. I think it gives flexibility, but I understand your concern, and I think, reporting me 4 times a year, I don't have any heartburn with that, I always like as much flexibility as possible, but, I'm fine with
I
that.
know I'm going back to the past, but there's good reason to go back to the past.
Yeah.
That's how we wound up with, management with Bank of New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Gary,
That's fine with me.
okay,
so I'll insert that paragraph as well as the high-risk investment
Yep.
paragraphs.
right,
There was a couple little redundancies too, I did. Actually need to take out the reference to total return. You're actually not allowed to invest municipal money per total return investment. Way it's just a slight difference again, but you have to apply to the state. Or to the charitable trust or to the state in order to manage the monies in a total return perspective. Because that total return kind of takes away some of the nuance of income versus principal. And income versus principal is a very, very important concept when you're looking at any kind of municipal money. So I'm taking out one of the, pardon me?
Where was that?
It was on my copy, page 3, the top line. Have an objective of maximizing total return within reasonable levels. And I'm just taking out that word total because I don't want there to be any confusion with anybody reading this policy. So it's page 3 of my policy, the very first sentence. Trust fund investment objective. On that last word on the first sentence. So what I'm gonna suggest is I'll go ahead and clean this up, insert things, send it back out. And in the meantime, if there are other things that you all come up at with, as you're discussing today or whatever, feel free to send me your changes that you'd like to see in there, and I'm happy to put them in. If I see something distinctly that I feel strongly about, I will get back to you. Otherwise, I will insert or change the language as you wish.
Now, I have a question, on your paper, it's capital reserves and trust fund review. Yes.
Capital reserve and.
Yes, the sentence that says, a review of these investment policy guidelines will be undertaken at least annually to include a discussion of changing circumstance or objective. Gary said that we have to do this by state law. Because my question was, I was gonna put if warranted.
No, it's
It is, it's bad, okay, that's what.
And in fact, you don't have to send the policy every year, but you do, which is one reason why we always include a policy
Well,
every quarterly.
report.
And it's important that you put in your minutes
Right.
that it was reviewed, because you do not have to provide the Attorney General's office or charitable trust with the copy of the policy unless something has been changed. However, you do have to have somewhere in your minutes and provide that.
Yeah.
So you
That
ratified
you
it.
had, that you
Yeah,
had
That's what
reviewed
the
it.
area is.
I also, if you notice at the end of my policy, I put for the signatures, I love this. Amendments, date and reason for amendments. A lot of, excuse me, policies have adopted by the trustees September, blah, 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 and then they'll have amended, September 2027. You don't know what was amended. So the next people who come in,
Oh, I
it's a beautiful way to track changes and why. I think it shows complete transparency on the last page underneath where the signature line is. Amendments, date and reason. So if there was an amendment, I put 2027.9.24 and I put changed increased equity allocation to target to 20% in capital reserve fund reason. Whatever the reason might be. And it just is a way to show why you've changed something. So I also added that.
I think that's a good amendment.
Yeah.
I agree, absolutely. Because somebody coming in, all of them, what was amended? What was
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent. That is nice. I mean, very good.
So,
The only thing I'm concerned about is, when I first read this. And I looked at ours, I think ours is streamlined, which is good. I think yours, is very technical, but I wonder if somebody new got on this board and read this. Maybe they're gonna say, what? Where am I?
So I'll try to take out some of the verbiage and maybe streamline. That's what I said, there was some redundancy
That's what
where I
that-
had repeated myself.
Well, not so much redundancy, but I'm reading it, I'm just playing a part of a new member, and I'm starting to read, and I'm saying, what am I? I'm gonna get a little bit. The facts are there for sure. I'm just concerned somebody's gonna read this and say, wow, this is a lot of. Compared to our streamlined version, this is quite,
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
and in my opinion, appropriately so. I mean, it needed to be a little more detailed than what you had provided.
I think that it gives, again, the guidance that mutual funds and ETFs are allowed, that there are, for instance, that, I put in the language of why we might not want to use a bond fund in the capital reserve account, because you can, a bond fund can experience losses that if you had to sell something. You really want to have individual securities that mature off where you're providing consistent cash flow. It's important, so it's giving sort of the reasons for why you would choose laddered bonds as opposed to a mutual fund, so that somebody who comes in doesn't say, why don't we just use the mutual fund? And why don't we just use the bond fund? Well, it's not appropriate. And I think, again, these are all things over time that a lot of, sometimes people much smarter than me have put into policies
Yeah.
too, that I look at and I say, I appreciate that this was added to this policy and I understand why. I think also, quite frankly, my opinion is that somebody coming into become a trustee, there is a certain level of, appreciative knowledge that the time that they may, a learning curve, so to speak, that they may need to have. I mean, we all of, you come in, beautiful citizens deciding to, provide your time and in this role. And it is a learning curve, I think, for people to assume those responsibilities, then. And this is really meant to be not something hard for them to look at, but for them over time, that does become digestible, that in their role, they can then understand maybe a little, more down the road. I understand what you're saying. It's kind of like a big math problem. It's a little daunting. I
Big
understand.
big problem.
Right, trick problem, exactly. It looks like math. It's like,
Right.
oh my gosh, an RSA that's legal. But I think that there is a reason for that. We are dealing with the Attorney General and we're dealing with legal provisions that are real. And so I think that we ramping it up to that standard is sort of, important. That's my opinion.
So just give us your feedback, make edits, send them down to Donna and she'll take a look and incorporate them and make deletions on whatever you see fit. And you can adopt them whenever. We're gonna be up to see you in
October 16th.
October 16th.
Do have another,
Yes, please.
I'm not sure if we're gonna, how much. But if we do, I'm looking at, section. The capital reserve funds equity policy paragraph on your, captain today, it's on.
Second page.
It's two,
Page first.
3/4 of the way down.
Right.
See that paragraph?
Yes,
Okay, so, reads equity exposure is allowed under statutes, because the capital during its point of view, both to those private sectors. While the RSA is allowed for individual security exchange of paid funds and mutual funds, only funds are allowed for purposes of investments. But in this.
at the time,
A couple of other places where policy refers to uses the word funds by itself. Sorry, using like the. What do you mean when you say only funds?
mutual funds and exchange traded funds. Not individuals stock picked, like I'm not buying Microsoft, Nvidia. And actually, I had in there for the purpose of the town assets. At the time of this policy's execution, I was gonna continue that on. And only index large cap funds are allowed.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that not only we're excluding individual securities. And we're only using funds, and in fact, we're only using large cap funds. 'Cause I had actually asked for trustee of trust funds how they felt about me using small cap, or even using growth versus value. You know, there's so many different ways to invest, even within funds, and you all had said that you prefer to keep it like the S&P 500, and that was it.
Right, the
So
guideline-
I'm saying that while these other things are allowed, this trustee of trust fund has decided that they're only going to use mutual funds or exchange traded funds and only large cap index.
Right, well, I think though, we do have mid cap ETF.
That's in the
That's in the
trust.
fund.
Oh, okay, but this is capital.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
well, that's
so
a very
capital
good point,
reserve
too.
is the
Yeah.
larger money that's used, that's the taxpayer money that is used for the budgetary items. And we want to keep that money as streamlined and not get fancy and off the reservation with anything. Mid cap stocks are riskier than large cap, small cap are even riskier than mid cap and large cap. So we're keeping those off the table. We're not getting into value stocks versus growth stocks, which a portfolio manager can use during different economic cycles. We're just gonna stick with the large cap S&P 500, which is a blend of value and growth, so we're getting both. And we're just gonna stick with that, to be very simple. As I said, this will provide proper diversification in the sale, nothing fancy.
So it looks like that's primarily the Vanguard S&P.
Yeah, the Vanguard fund has it has now a similar, I think it's 3 basis point fee for that fund. It has a slightly, they're all index funds, they do slightly differentiate a little bit than IVV, which is, different, fund families, have different, S&P, but Vanguard, I like the Vanguard fund, so I'm using that.
And I'll be, I don't know too much to read, but I'm not, I wouldn't object if this same index fund thing was carried over into the trust funds as well. Because I was never very comfortable with like these international funds. To be honest with you.
Well, international does have, so interesting, international is an index fund. It's just indexed off of a very diverse group of high quality. You have emerging markets, which is low quality international, and then you have high quality, which would be what, we're using. Interestingly enough, when we came out of COVID, international, remember, we all went into COVID together globally. Internationally, like the international developed countries have come out of it a little bit cleaner than we were, and they actually were outperforming domestic. We want to make sure that we don't get into a thing where we are, what we call it's behavioral finance, where you start to, like Germans want to buy German products, German stuff, because they know them, they're familiar. That's called country bias. We want to make sure that we're looking at finance objectively, and we say whatever is performing the best within reason. And we're looking at developed countries' international stocks. So it provides diversification to what we're investing in internationally. We've capped that investment at, in fact, I probably could even add that for the trust fund money for equities. We, in a lot of policies, they cap that. We say we will only allow for, of the equity portion, maximum of 20% in international. And I'm happy to, add that.
Which I think is a huge amount. I mean, I just don't like it. Probably not. I mean, like I said, we can discuss this later, but yeah, I don't think the current environment, it's gonna be returning as much as the US.
But you're
Well,
saying
so-
current, and that's what if you
Yeah.
put that into today's policy, it means that you're precluding it for periods of time when it could be. And that's my only as an
Mhm.
investment person, you
Right.
want to leave the ability for a portfolio manager to manage the money
Right.
to the best within the confines of staying, again, developed countries, Germany, a lot of these countries, they have a lot to offer. I mean, they're developed, they have, and they actually are now because of the changes with NATO and things like that, and the United States not giving as much money. They are developing their own internal industries to a greater capacity, that than they previously have. But I,
It's a perpetual account, perpetual trust fund. I mean, I think it provides diversification. I mean, this is more of an investment discussion we can take.
Right, yeah,
Next month.
I don't, I apologize for going on.
No,
No,
if you can eliminate it from your policy, in which case we wouldn't have it.
Right.
But if it's allowable, then our discretion will dictate that we have certain, and sometimes we won't, sometimes we will. But that's a more specific discussion as to, the economic environment, et cetera. But for a more longer term portfolio such as the trust funds, we think currently it makes some sense to have some exposure.
Anything else, or we let these people go?
I'll let those guys go first. I had a couple things I wanted to mention, just for FYI. Okay, so just FYI.
Yeah.
We already discussed the fire truck.
Yeah.
Okay. So the other thing was, we're just cleaning up something with Terry as far as the MS-10s have been approved. The MS-9, they wanted a fee sheet. Terry's already taken care of this.
Okay.
She wanted a fee sheet. Amy Nickel from the state wanted a fee sheet because it got, like, two of the accounts, the Memorial Fund and Cemetery Fund, got flagged because it was over 2%. But I think it had nothing to do. They were flagged, so she needs them to be unflagged, and she needs documentation as to why they were.
Yeah, I remember talking to
But
Terry.
it has nothing to do with
Nothing to do with
anything, right?
No,
And then, I think that's it. I think that's it. I have some other things. That's it.
Terry, you know anything else? Start to go.
yeah, and again, please, you have my phone number.
Yeah.
Feel free to call. This was a working session. Thank you for providing the original document from which I could just massage.
no, helpful, yeah.
And that was very helpful. I
Yeah.
really appreciate the change in funds. I appreciate the way that you're managing this money and what you have, the differences that you're bringing to the table for managing the money in the best way possible. So,
Thanks for
thank
coming.
you.
All right, see you.
October 16th,
Yeah, 6
o'clock.
We'll be here.
Later.
A little more color than today.
Yeah, okay.
You won't have to battle the school buses.
Oh.
No.
No, I know that's not fun.
Thanks all.
Thanks, I'll see you. See you around a bit.
Appreciate
Yeah,
your
we
hard
got
work there.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chuck. Okay, let's do some business, now we can discuss.
Okay.
What's
Sure.
today. Okay, minutes. Next thing. Thank you, Jay, for giving me a copy. Appreciate it, let's take a minute to go through it. Great to me.
Yeah, good job, Gary. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, motion to accept the minutes,
I'll make that motion.
okay, second, Seconded, discussion? Needs any discussion? Great piece of work here. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed, abstained. Passed, I will now sign them. Jane on the way out. Yeah, I got an email a couple of days ago, I would go through a list of meetings we've had, was that quick? Okay, for the year 2025, the trust funds in Lincoln. We had a meeting January 16th with the bank. We had a meeting March 13th for the election and also a work session. April 17th with the bank. July 17th with the bank. September 18th was a work session, and our next meeting is October 16th, 2025, which is a quarterly meeting, and that'll be at 10 o'clock. Also like to say that having talked about this, it was in the minutes too. About the Federal Reserve, I said in February it needed to drop a point. I said it in July it needed to drop a point, and now yesterday we got a quarter of a point, if I'm correct. I guess it's one economist said it's a minor step in the right direction. At least it's a step. And the reason I bring this up is people have asked me, in different locations in the town, what do I think about this? What does the board think about it? So, we will take a minute to talk about it. And because, taxpayers elected us and they have questions, I have no problem with discussing local problems, state, national, or international situation. If it involves financing, which obviously this does, we are losing millions of dollars on this. And people are affected, even people getting car loans and mortgages have come to me and said, wouldn't that affect that? It would, yes, it does, everything does. So that's my comment on it. Paul, you wanted to comment on Federal Reserve?
I did watch a little bit of the speech, and
I did too.
I thought it was interesting that he said he was perplexed by our financial area we're in right now, and he actually sounded like he actually said he didn't know which is the best course to follow, and so it was kind of weird. But as far as the town's concerned, I mean, this is good for our money, we're getting a higher return, so as far as town's concerned, we're steady as she goes.
That's correct, they are getting good
interest, and I think that's what's most important for us and our money. So.
Yeah. Thoughts?
Not much. I think it's pretty much what was expected. Yeah, no, I don't really have too many thoughts on it. I think I appreciate your input on it.
Good. Okay, very good. Paul, you had something about?
I mean, basically,
We'll do the.
and then we'll do the policy. Right, sure.
Right. So we've been on it for a while.
And just real quick,
Yeah, sure.
as Gary correctly annotated in the minutes, that number 3 is we withdrew some monies from the fire department auxiliary fund. Now this was at the advice of the state to withdraw these funds. And
That's
then,
correct, yes.
yeah, and then I wasn't privy to the event, but the fire auxiliary came back and said, hey, we're having problems investing this, and can you reconsider, basically.
Was this red flag?
What's that?
Was this red flag?
Red flag.
Yeah.
By the state, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, originally, Amy Nichols said this was the gray area. And she also said in the emails that we could still have it, but she was more comfortable not doing it. But it was a gray area. Maybe I'm stating it too, she didn't actually say I'm more comfortable not doing it. She said, to the effect, you can do it, but at the same time, she's recommending not doing it. So it is kind of
That's your view too.
what's that?
I thought your view too, you're the mind.
No, I mean, this was her advice,
Right.
and so I said, okay, well, we'll just take it out, I don't want problems, you know? And then, anyway, so the fire department came back and, talked to the finance person here. And they called Amy, explained the situation. And the state is very customer service focused, which is awesome.
Right.
And they're very accommodating to us, and I talked to her yesterday. And, I said, well, okay, you guys can do it, but when I talked to her, she said, but what I need, if you're gonna do this, and I'm perfectly content to work with the auxiliary fire department, and they should get our support.
Absolutely.
So, but they said, we're gonna have to go into have a written document by the fire auxiliary, what these, the who, what, where, when, why, how these things
Gives these
are gonna be done. So when we give them money and, say there's a discrepancy with this or any of the town's funds, if we have to go to the Department of Revenue and get a resolution on how they're expended, we have to go back to the policy and say, no, you guys said this was for, I don't know, t-shirts, and you're using it for,
Helmets.
I don't know, whatever, right?
Right.
And like, whatever the correct analogy is,
Okay.
and so these things have to be in there. And there's also more minor things about the people collecting the funds can't be the person requesting the funds, so there has to be a mechanism that's at least documented on that respect too. It can be the same person. As I said, it's a fire chief, but if it's like other people, I guess, department, it's a little more.
So
Not okay.
So something's in a gray area.
Yeah, it's more than a gray area. It's just like you can't, unless it's that one individual.
Yeah.
So, I'm okay, with including the fire department auxiliary funds and them using it and us overseeing it. So it's a state, but we do need to have a policy on record on how they're using these funds, who's in charge of it, blah, 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 who, what, where, when, why, how, type of document. Not that it has to be exhaustive, but it has to, we have to have something in place, and we don't have that right now.
Should they come in here?
Honestly, I've never dealt with this before, so I'm not.
Never dealt with it.
So I'm not 100%. I mean, again, Amy from the state is very customer service oriented. Maybe I can go back and ask her some boilerplate, and
See where we're going.
see where we're going, and then play it by ear.
Eric, comfortable with that?
Yes,
Okay.
I guess I really don't know much about the.
What?
part of
we-
it's probably part of the reason.
Oh, I don't know, yeah.
We're gonna take
Yeah, I don't-
responsibility for it. Yeah, I don't know how they raise the funds, what it's supposed to be used for, but of course, for the record, we have been, when we did have it, we had been investing in along with the other trust funds. So with our end,
Might be a good idea to talk to him.
fine, but it sounds like to cover things as simple as research with the state.
Yeah.
We need more details.
Right, let's follow through with.
Yeah. Right, so I would say for now, we took out the money, so I say just redeposit it so we can start accumulating interest on it again. And in the interim, we'll plug away at this policy to, we'll plug away at the policy. I was gonna give myself a deadline.
No.
I might not.
We don't need a deadline.
I'm gonna say.
We don't need a deadline.
Right.
That's good play.
Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, as long as the state's okay, I wanna make sure they're happy about everything.
Well, I think it's testimony to the state, I mean, you said that they're very.
Customer service,
Yeah,
and they are.
that is not true in a lot of other states, I'm not gonna go into names.
Or other departments, even, I mean,
It's not true.
well, I wouldn't say,
I
I
shouldn't
shouldn't
say
say other departments, it may or may not, I never had a problem with the state, honestly, they've always been, every interaction I had with the state, honestly, it's been very.
I can ditto that, no problem with the state. Just, which speaks highly of the state.
They have a long history of excellent directors of charitable personally.
Yeah.
Most of them personally, and they develop and really quality people.
That speaks volumes.
Yeah, and I've dealt with the education department, and they're also. So, and I also talked to the tax department once, and, they were very nice also. Good, I mean, honestly, every interaction. It's great.
Excellent. Now, is there anything else before we go?
Oh, there's one more thing I wanted to say that we agreed to, put in the minutes, although we haven't as of yet. But I just want to, as of right now, when they have deposits to make for like a cemetery deposit or whatever it is, there's a little form, one piece of paper form, and I went over this with Becky, or our finance person, maybe that's better way of phrasing it, and they're happy to make the deposit, so, it would, get it out of the office here and down to the Bank of New Hampshire.
So we wanna do a motion,
I'm under a motion to allow them to go ahead and to make those deposits.
make a motion,
Who is it?
the town finance.
So the town finance or anyone with the town to maybe,
Therefore, they're not tied up, trying to get off.
designate that they, so I'm making a motion that the town or the town designee, make any financial deposits only to the Bank of New Hampshire, using the provided forms from the bank and the trust fund for account numbers. And not wait basically for the trust fund to.
I'll second that. Any further discussion on the motion?
I guess just for clarification.
Right, sure. That was kind of.
How does that differ from the motion we previously adopted to authorize? Other ways to make projects?
It's not, but did we ever get that in the minutes?
Yeah, I think, yeah, we did.
Did we get that? Because that's all they're requesting is that it's in the minutes that we show it to them. I mean,
We go
maybe,
back.
maybe I didn't,
Okay, I know we discussed
I
it.
know we discussed it and I'm just looking at these last minutes.
Well, I thought that when we did.
Oh, it was May 8th, so I'm looking at the May 8th
Yeah,
minutes,
right,
and paragraph 3 says. The trustees discussed the procedures for making deposits of town funds to the Bank of New Hampshire account. The trustees voted unanimously to authorize a town employee, such as town treasurer or another duty authorized employee, to make the deposits only to the Bank of New Hampshire account in order to provide more efficiency in the process.
Well, then that is my bad because, I asked them and they said they didn't see anything in the thing, but. Let's provide them that and then they'll be okay. They'll be okay. No, because I remember going out again. I don't, and then they said we never got it, and then I guess I did not provide them with the most recent.
well, I'm here, when Matt was there, we talked about that.
Well, we talked about it for a time too.
Yeah.
So I
Okay, so-
apologize. So we'll put it to bed, we'll do a copy of that,
Okay.
and then we don't need to do the motion I just made. So I
Okay,
just
so
draw the
motion,
motion.
motion to withdraw, second withdraw, there'll be no.
Sorry, apologize.
Oh, no problem. I know we discussed this in the past.
Yeah, we did. And,
Right.
yeah, I guess we just haven't, I haven't closed the loop to give them a copy of the minutes from May 8th.
May 8th, minutes. Thank you, Jerry, for that reference, checking.
Right, so hopefully the deposit will be done, no, you know, and that's one
It's
thing.
easier for them.
Well, it's easier for them, you know,
Makes
especially
sense
when they
they
have
do.
$1 million check. I mean,
Yeah.
because then they ask me for a receipt of the deposit that they had, you
Right.
know, and it's just another layer of bureaucracy.
Yeah.
If they get the actual receipt and the thing, I mean, I'm happy getting the bank state,
Exactly.
which is another piece of information. You know?
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
I have a copy.
oh, that would be
It
awesome.
doesn't have a signature.
That's fine.
You want me to sign it?
Yeah, you got it, sign it. Take one.
And you cut them with color.
They have it in their thing as well, but yeah, I'll give it this to them in their box after this.
Is there anything else you've got?
Am I signing this or just you sign?
You can sign it.
I don't.
You can sign it. Because I'm supposed to sign it like.
Oh, okay.
statutes. Anything else you have, Paul?
Yeah, I'm just looking down here, we talked about policy, fire truck, fire auxiliary,
Right.
investments we discussed vaguely, I'm not gonna get into that, I know we already spent a lot of time today, nobody wants to leave probably. MS9s, yep, okay, I'm done.
Okay, now we'll get back to our last item, which is. Investment statement. When you out of the room, Paul,
Yeah,
I said to them, but. I see ours as a streamlined version. When I read this, I said, I read it as, try to read it as. A brand new person, never been on a trustee board. For me to read this one, then read this one, when I read this one. It was like, I didn't need to read it, it was trigonometry.
right,
And, you know, Frank's, well, it needs to be.
it needs to be.
I don't know,
what did Frank say?
I think,
Hey, Frank.
I think
Oh,
the work that we did on that was a home run, I think. The policy we did is a home run. If you wanna add some of this, but I think this, personally, I just think this is too much. You know, I read it 2-3 times.
Well, the thing is, we didn't author it, and when you don't author something, we authored the other policy, so
Right.
we understand it.
Yeah.
You know, she authored this policy, so she's coming from a totally different perspective on many things, and I mean, like the funds that she pointed out, I mean, that you're pointing out, when you're talking about, you know, she, in her mind's eye, she understands the difference between securities, this fund and that fund.
Right.
And, you know, so we're at a point where we have to crawl under her head and try and understand where she's coming from. And that makes it really difficult, you know, honestly. And, you know, as far in general, I mean, Gary sent a policy statement from the guidelines from the charitable trust unit.
Right.
Which I liked an awful lot because it's from the state, you know?
Yeah.
And
Can't.
I hate that the state that hasn't updated it since 1996 because it leaves holes, you know?
Exactly, which Gary pointed out.
Right, and which I don't like either.
No, I agree.
But, and I like what we wrote because we plugged some of those holes, but we didn't plug some of the other holes that were pointed out as well. And Donna, to her credit, did bring up the differentiation between the different fund types, between the trust funds and the capital funds, which I think was a valid point.
Yeah.
You know, I think it was a valid point.
Yeah, that's valid.
So where I'm at right now, it's like, okay, you know, I like what we did.
Yeah.
You know, but we missed some things that were in the trust fund. And I like what we did, but we did miss, we never made that differentiation that she made between the two different types of funds. I still think ours or the states is much closer and I'm much more comfortable with either of those policy statements than with Donna's. Because, I mean, to be frank, the bank wrote it and they're also doing the investing. And they're not providing oversight, we are. So I'm comfortable with our either one of those versions with some minor changes on maybe including the trust fund and some verbiage that that the charitable trust unit had as far as asset allocations. Which were much more generous, honestly, than what Don provided. I mean, they said 20% equity, which but again, they're kind of referring to those capital funds, not the trust funds. I would start from our drafts, you know, I would not start from their drafts, because I just don't know where they're coming from. And it would take me longer to backtrack all of their language than the language I'm already so intimate with already, you know. So, I mean, our draft, we can add a paragraph here, a sentence here. With theirs, even if with all the corrections I would do on it, I still wouldn't know and any holes that I'm missing, you know.
That's why I changed, in Oz about this meeting, you know, at least, I don't know, no, at least. People are gonna run with that. Well, in the past,
I just
you
want to.
needed it. Well, and you could say, all right, frequently, all right, I said, if warranted. Work sessions are warranted. That was something in the past, you know, until we switched it, and we need to have some work sessions too. This amount of investment just can't meet constituency, it doesn't work. And it wasn't working, obviously,
No.
when I came in.
I mean, we're elected officials, and honestly, this last year has been the most productive year of asset return that we've ever had.
Absolutely,
And that's due to the policy of this board directly.
absolutely.
And so, you know, we're doing the public's trusts correctly, and we're making money, and but we need a certain amount of means to do that correctly. So I agree with it.
Okay. Gary, turn it over to you now.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, we're all agreeing with what we're saying, that you know, what we had was fine for the most part. I mean, vast majority was fine.
Yep.
It does sound like there were a couple of areas that need to be changed. Two main things in my mind that she emphasized. One was the differentiation between philosophy and time frame horizon investment types for the capital reserve fund versus the trust funds. And the second thing is, it sounds like it is very important that we just, for technical reasons, include provide authority for them to invest in accordance with the investor. She actually said that she doesn't have that in there, but we can do some things. So that just takes some sense. But you know, I asked her, for example, starting with
Page one.
page 1, and going up to the section on investment guidance, if there were any problems that she had with our language, and there wasn't. So it seems to me that we could, as you both were saying, you know, try to work off our draft, and I think really the whole first page and the first two paragraphs of the second page, I have to look a little more closely, but my gut instinct is that they might be fine the way they are. Somewhere in there we can have a prudent investment goal.
Yeah.
And then the trickier part that we probably do need to spend a little more time on, and I'm sure you how we do it, is to include the breakdown between capital reserve and trust funds, and maybe to put in some percentages or to adjust that language. And I'm not sure just how we would do that yet, but I think we're all on the same page.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and you know, and then we're going back to the state charitable trust fund. They didn't make that decision, so I don't know where they were coming from. You know, I mean, maybe they circumvented need even go into it, because when they break down the asset allocation, they say guide. You know, which opens up a huge
Opens up
window,
floodgates.
So, you know, I mean, she differentiated, but the state didn't. Maybe they did it because they thought it would be, you know, maybe they did that for a reason. You know,
In our actual investments, we are quite different. We've got like 7% fixed with the capital area, we have quite a bit of equity.
There is a huge differentiation here, absolutely correct, absolutely correct. Because there is an additional, regardless of the investment policy, there is RSA that states specifically that you have to have capital investments have to be invested differently. And so there's another RSA that covers that isn't in the investment policy. So, I mean, we're almost getting to the point where we're rewriting an RSA. We're not where we want to be.
No, we don't want to begin that.
Less is more, less is a lot more, in my opinion, for reasons,
So
Definitely.
I don't know what we should do. Should we try to? Should we try our own? Should write changes and circulate them among ourselves? Or
Well, we have to be careful about it. We have to be very careful. This is something the budget committee have to be careful to. Communication like that is not supposed to be going on unless you're at a regular meeting. In other words, sending an email or something that says, okay, we're gonna talk about fire trucks, that's fine. But you're discussing, then this is technical information. We could have a problem with that. My suggestion is. We have a meeting with them in October 16th. And then we won't meet with them again until January. Why don't we have a work session after we meet with them? I suppose, is that doable? I better not go from October to January with no meeting.
No, and I think coordinating the two meetings is correct. And I'll just say,
We could, and if they should send something, we can say, we need more time on this. And we can discuss it with them a little more in October. And between that, I mean, I don't think they realize that I try to say today that we really like the policy we have. It's a streamlined policy. Is it perfect? No. As Gary said, there's some points, stuff we've got to add, but do we have to have 2 or 3 pages? No. I don't think we need a 4 or 5 page policy. I don't think.
And I think it's the wrong direction. I really think.
Yeah, I do too.
I understand where they're coming from, but.
Yeah, I do.
I mean, but I just don't, that isn't helping us.
I'm understanding where you're coming.
Yeah, I think less is more. I think sticking with the state policy, I think what we had, it is near perfect. It's fine. We understand it. We can always change it,
Yeah.
We don't have to get wrapped up too much around the axles on this, quite honestly. We're all in agreement in general policy. They're in agreement with how we're doing things. We're making money. We're correctly diversified. I mean, we're just tweaking things here and there. We probably need to update policy because we haven't done in a while. But I mean, whether we stick with the state policy, the one we did is fine. Either one of those or some variation of that are fine. I don't even think we need to diversify maybe between the 2 different funds. We find it's too difficult at this point in time. And the only thing I would say is, and we can talk about this more, but I just want you guys to think about it.
Yeah.
I don't like this international investment stuff. I think there's plenty of diversity in the 500 companies in the United States. Going international, there's a whole host of reasons not to do it. Whether that you're talking about the current tariff situation, or you're talking about, the economics of foreign countries, the labor policies they have in different countries. A lot of these people have slave labor, different things, and and it's and the other thing I just say real quick is like these investment people, they have like a new flavor of the month. It comes out every periodically. They come out with this new idea of how to invest the same pieces of pie. And I think the international fund was an okay idea at the time, but I think it's just kind of gimmicky, honestly. I mean, the U.S. invests internationally on its own, and those companies are invested internationally as well. So
I think it was interesting. Donna said, "Well, now that we're not giving them not giving the money to NATO. I'd like to point out that President Trump, rightfully so, that is now collecting money from NATO from countries that weren't even paying anything, or maybe a few percentage points. So that money that we were doing that, we're getting that money back, which is more money for our economy. And, you know, internationally, I agree with you, Paul, that you're getting involved with different governments, different leaders, different types of situations.
Well, especially if it's 20%, that's an outrageously large amount. That's craziness. Talk 20% international.
What do you think about international?
I don't know why, but I think that what I picked up from what they were saying is whether or not we think it's a good idea now, it's not the type of thing that we should ban them from doing. It's something that we and they might want to do at some time. So, as a general rule, I think it's probably better to not to rule out certain types of investments. And then, you know, on a case by case basis, we can decide whether or not we can do that kind of investment.
So we do like a watchdog on this, maybe? But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Could we be like could have this like international what? With eyes really on it. Not just really, like we said, flavor of the month.
Well, it was a flavor of the month,
Yeah,
honestly.
right.
It absolutely was. I mean, just like they say, oh, it's 4-hour conversion. Oh, let's do derivatives. Oh, they always come out with a new stuff. I swear, they constantly, they have nothing better to do than come up with a new way of cutting the pie constantly.
Okay.
And investors just get confused, you know, and like, you know, like. But 20% it was what you suggested.
Yeah.
Which
That's one, that's the big
in an investment vehicle that is not returning as much as the S&P 500, it just isn't. And it costs more in fees, you know, and it has more volatility. You know, I'd have to go look at the graphs,
Okay.
which I wish that when she suggests these things, I wish she would do what basic investors do. And which the policy from the state says in the charitable trust, it says, compare it to the benchmark. And the benchmark that they use in the charitable trust is the S&P 500. So they should, and also they say the Lehman's for the fixed income for the bonds. And so that's what the state is recommending that we use. Okay. So if she's going to bring in the international, which again, I don't agree with,
Right.
but the state is saying, compare it to the S&P 500. And I wish he would show us the analysis that any prudent investor would do, saying, hey, how much are we getting return for this? What is return for the last 5 years? What is return the last 3 years? What is it year to date? We're not getting it. We're getting words, you know? We're getting the verbal model, okay, or her mental model off the top of her head.
Okay.
I want to see something written. You know, I want a written model, you know, or even a mathematical, go in more detail, which is easy enough with analysis, and give me the mathematical model of what the return would have been with the international versus the S&P 500 versus the Russell index, or whatever you want to compare, you know.
Okay.
And instead of this, you know, off the top of my head analysis, and that's honestly that they're smart enough to do a better analysis than that, but they're going to make an argument. I mean, that's what I would do as a prudent investor is do a very basic A to B comparison. That is what is recommended in the trust fund. We're not getting that, okay? And so I wholeheartedly reject that. Instead, they're saying, oh, this, that, oh, Germany's doing this.
No.
Yeah, what?
No.
Germany's doing this off the top of my head. You know, I can make argument that, you know, Germany has a huge demographic problem, and they're even going to be able to support their economy in 10 years, you know, which is a very valid argument in all the Western civilizations. America would be in the same boat if we didn't have immigration, you know. And, you know, I mean, China has a huge demographic problem. They're totally upside down. I mean, some people can predict they're going to have in 10 years, they're not even going to have a country. I mean, you know, you believe some people, you know. So, I mean, we need an A/B comparison. But I recommend we stay with the American company, we stay with BOO. There's 500 companies in this index. They invest internationally with all their products, whether that's Apple or General Motors or whatever. And there's plenty of international where the economies are tied together. And you know, I just don't think there's too many variables in here. And I think we have tons of diversity, even within the fund. With, you know, we have fixed income, we have equities, and we're just talking of, you know, and CDs and other things. So our portfolio is huge amount of diversity. And we're talking about diversity within a diversity within a diversity within a diversity right now, you know, and it's unnecessary. And I'll tell you, quite frankly, and not with these people necessarily, but it is a tactic of a lot of these financial firms to make you diversify to a point where they collect fees on every diversification that you make. And I've seen portfolios, numerous portfolios, where they had an investor who didn't know what they're doing, and they'll have like 50 or 60 different individual investments and a fee for each investment, you know, and it's criminal, but it's done. It is absolutely common, very common, especially with older people who don't understand investing, and they're being taken, you know, to the wood pile investment wise, and they're just being ripped off. But anyways,
But do you like the idea of meet with them in October?
yeah, sorry, I didn't go on the rant there.
And then after that, we'll have a work session, say November.
Well, that was interesting. Some good points.
Do you think that's
Yeah,
a good? And then we could get,
Right.
like you said, we can add some stuff to our version. And I said our version is a streamline, so I said it's a streamlined version.
Less is more.
And I saw the eyes rolling, I said it's streamlined version.
Less is absolutely more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not committing to this, but I may take a shot at bringing a revised version for our next meeting too, but it won't be. Let me take a pass at it. I won't circulate by, you know. but-
No, we don't want to do anything.
Go for it, man. Go for
Yeah.
it.
I'm not the promise.
Right, exactly, yeah.
No, I like when you just said a few minutes ago, and I like what you said, you said, page 1, what do you think? Is there something, that's getting to the point, page 2, what don't you like? I think that was home run.
And Gary, you can have this document too, if you want. That's the latest one. You've probably never seen that version.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna have to split it. Thank you.
Yeah, I get that monthly. I don't know. I mean, it's if you use your password to get into it, that's what it'll look like. On the thing. But I like having a hard copy. I'll bring those in monthly and give it to one of you guys. And you know, I just do a quick one look.
That's fine.
So,
Appreciate that, Paul.
when I log in, I couldn't find a monthly account statement because I can see the funds. I can go online.
Wow. You gotta go up to the headings of the things and.
Gosh, when I went there, it said those statements fell.
Well, I've always told the bank, make sure everybody gets, every board member gets email, not
Well,
just
you
me.
know what,
Everybody
we
gets.
can ask them to do, you know, honestly, let's, cause I really do like having that more than any of the others, honestly. We'll ask them to do 3 copies from now on for everyone that trusts my debt staff. Because it's nice to see, because like that, since we've done the stocks, it's more now, because we got over 14% return on stocks this year, which is a huge jump, you know, and you know, like the charitable fund thing says we can invest up to 20% in equities, and we're down around 15. It's like, now that we're up so much, we can even do a little more if we want to. I mean, I'm just saying.
No, exactly.
We're kind of like out of the woods now, because when you initially invest in these stocks, the first year is always the toughest, you know. But after you get past the hump, that hump with a big return like we're going to have this year, it's like forever, we're always gonna have that return, so we can always incorporate that into our map. And so we're gonna be, because, you know, the S&P 500 is at 19.9, and everyone likes to say,
Right,
until now, has returned 10% on average every year. There's variations obviously in there, but if you can get past that initial point, you're gonna be in the black the whole time you're. At least that's been the thing since 1920.
hey, anything else? Old new business, anything else I can think of? I don't think so. Again, thank you for people linking up and watching, and you'll get a lot of people watching these meetings. Very happy about that. I think we've addressed everything, the questions, emails I had. And at this point, I will call for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Motion, second? Second. All in favor? Aye. All abstain. Yeah, I'll add, 10. Paul, would you please shut everything off? And I will shut off the lights, pull the battery off. I think that a good job with the chair. He has been doing it.